Hey everyone, welcome to Chaos and Order, art by Susan Holt. Today is Monday, February 16th, and I am working on a new painted mandala. Well, newish. And I figured that I might as well paint live today instead of just painting all by myself alone here in my studio. I usually don't go live on Mondays. I go live Wednesday evenings at 5 p.m. right here on Chaos and Order, art by Susan Holt. So let's go ahead and get this live started, and we'll see where it takes us today. All right, move my camera around so you can see what I'm working on. There we go. And I will be turning the paper around, so you're not gonna miss much. I have my bigger reading glasses for when I need them, because I will need them. All right, let's see. Myself situated over here with my paints. All right. So I don't think I have too much news to tell you today, and that's fine. I had a very not busy weekend. I was on the couch most of the weekend. I do have this absolutely killer bruise. It doesn't hurt or anything, but that was from helping friends with a project, so. So it's there on my arm. It doesn't hurt, which is nice. And a lot of you with really good eyesight or your glasses on may see that I am not being super fiddly with the shapes that I'm painting in between. Like I sometimes go over a corner that I've already painted. That's fine. I know how to fix that when we get there, but sometimes I don't have the patience to really kind of do all these little fiddly bits perfect. But I know that I can fix them here in a bit, so I'm not worried about that. This is gouache paint, Gouache, and it is a water-based paint. So it's like watercolor paints, only instead of being transparent, they are opaque. You can't really see through them like you can with watercolor paints. This goes on much more like an acrylic paint. It's a lot easier to clean up, and it is meant for working on paper mostly, which is what I'm working on. I'm working on a watercolor paper today with this mandala. I think this one is hot press or cold press. I think this one's cold press. Cold press has a little bit more texture to it than hot press does. Hot press is usually very smooth, like somebody ironed it, hence hot press. That's how I remember it. I'm a bit groggy today. think I'm just going to really paint most of the afternoon. Get as far along as I can on this. I did have someone ask me what is the difference between gouache and watercolor, because they're essentially two very similar paints. You can water down the gouache to make it look like watercolor, but it's not going to act like watercolor. So with watercolor, you build up the layers of paint, and you get, the more color you get on a watercolor painting, the darker the paint looks. But with this, if you water it down, it just gets really splotchy. And this is meant to go on in these kind of smooth, opaque layers. So that's basically the difference between watercolor and gouache. And you can use watercolor and gouache paints on the same art project, because they are similar enough to one another in makeup. So they're both, like I said, water media. You can add water to them and they thin down. You can let the water evaporate from them and they get thicker and creamier. But I don't interchange them for each other. They both serve different purposes in painting and painting styles. And the reason I'm working with a couple of different paper towels over here is because I don't want to get the oils from my skin on my paper. So this is a great way for me to be able to hold the paper where I need it without it going all oily and repelling the paint. And the one on top, just this little half folded one, is when I kind of go over a line I didn't really want to, like I just did, I can kind of scrape it back with my fingernail and then wipe it off on this one. And then it doesn't bleed through to the other one. Doesn't bleed through to the paper. This is just how I like to work. Other artists have their own way of working with these media. In art, a media is the supplies you use. So this is gouache is my media. It is a water-based paint. Watercolor paper is the surface I'm working on. Ink, well, pencil and ink for the drawing were also media that I used on this. So art kind of has its own vocabulary for the artists who are creating, and even the galleries that we submit to, or the collectors who know what they're looking at and they know the art world terms. They're not scary words. They're just a little different. Sometimes we call these mediums instead of media. Just depends on who you talk to. So the medium I'm working with, singular, is gouache paint. The media that I have used on this, plural, is so far pencil, ink, and gouache paint. Oh, and I did a little wash on the background in watercolor when I thought I was going to go a different direction with this. But I hated it. So I switched over to this, and I love it now, so yay. I currently have one of my little bubble paintings up at Herberger for their color exhibit. The Herberger Theater in downtown Phoenix has an art gallery upstairs, and right when you come into the box office, there's the grand staircase that goes upstairs. If you take that or ask where the elevator is, it will take you directly up to the art gallery, and that is where one of my little paintings is at. It's actually in the hallway right as you get off of the elevators, so it's a really good location. It's one of my little plummy purple paintings that I did with some of my bubbles on them. There's also a tandem exhibit that goes along with the color exhibit, and it's a photography exhibit about Japan, and it's fantastic. So I would recommend going and seeing both of them. They're both in a similar space upstairs. I think one is in the lounge. I think it's the Japan exhibit that's in the lounge. But they do have open viewing. I know the open viewing starts daily at noon for the galleries. I don't remember when they shut those down for the evening, but it's on their website. And if you just Google Herberger Theater or Herberger Theater Phoenix, it comes right up. All the information will be on there. And if you are into theater, they do some really wonderful theater productions. as well as music stuff, like the orchestra sometimes plays there. And they have kids programs too, which is really wonderful. Introduces the kids to art, which I think is really important. Are all kids going to appreciate art? No, but all adults don't appreciate art either. So it's just really, it's really good to expose everybody to art and theater. Especially these days when everything is so online, like I am right now with you. But it's nice to actually go and see the physical, real pieces of art. And it's wonderful to go see theater performances because it's a different experience than going to the movies. The whole atmosphere is different when you go to a live production, or you walk into a gallery and you see the actual art. Not prints, not photographs, not something on social media, but it's really wonderful to get to go and see art and artists. I know there's a big art show up in North Scottsdale right now. I have a friend who's got a booth there, and it's like a 3-month long thing. I forgot the name of it. I'll tell you the name on Wednesday. I've got my passes to it. We just haven't been able to get up there yet, but we will. I think it ends in March. But it's a really wonderful opportunity if you want to go see a whole bunch of artists and meet them and see their art in person and get to talk to the artists. It's a really amazing opportunity for people to do that. I find that most of us artists really love talking about our art. And if you have questions about my art or about me, my process, I'm always happy to answer them. So the theme of this mandala is Lily of the Valley, which is my favorite flower and is my one of the flowers of my birth month, I think. Or birth year or something. And they are toxic. If anyone out there is decorating their food with Lily of the Valley, don't do that. These plants are toxic. They will make you very sick. It will feel like you have the flu. I had a friend who was a private chef, and she went to judge a cooking competition. And she had to disqualify one of the dishes because they had put Lily of the Valley in it, like a handful of Lily of the Valley flower stems, and they just stuck it in the center of the dish, so it looked like the dish was growing the flowers. And since they are toxic, she refused to judge the dish and disqualified it. There are plants you can eat and there are plants you can't eat. And Lily of the Valley is definitely one you cannot eat. Well, you shouldn't. It'll make you miserable. So I have a question for you. What is your favorite flower? I have two favorite flowers. Lily of the Valley is one of them, and lilacs are the other. Also, Lily of the Valley is a true lily and is also toxic to cats and dogs. So if you have some in your yard, make sure your furry little friends don't get into them. started doing this painting with a different color theme, and I hated it. But I am so much happier with the way it's turning out with these colors. And I'm out here in Arizona, and it is absolutely beautiful outside. The last couple of weeks we've ranged anywhere from 60s to 80s for our highs, and that's wonderful. So I've been able to make trash runs over at the condo that I was helping clean out without overheating too much. I say without overheating too much because I am a middle-aged woman and I do overheat at pretty much the slightest anything. Slightest amount of physical labor. But it does feel good to work and be that physical and be able to be that physical. We have overcast skies today, so after I paint on here for a little bit, I think I'm gonna go outside and trim some more dead stuff off of our citrus trees. I wanted to get some more paint on here today. For those of you who joined me for my live or watched it in replay last Wednesday, you can see I've done quite a bit more work on here. And I do want to get a lot of the dead stuff off of our citrus trees before it gets too toasty for me. We have 2 trees that need to just come down completely. And I took a couple of trees down last year already. So we'll see how far I get this year before it gets too warm for me. And if it does get too warm for me, I may just bat my eyes at my husband and say, please hire someone to come cut the rest of these trees down. And we'll see what happens. We will figure it out. Seeing if I had any comments up there or questions, and I do not. But I see that Tina, Michelle, and Susan are watching. Hello, hello, lovely ladies. My friends. Thanks for joining me today, this spontaneous live. So I am working with a very limited palette on this mandala. So I basically have blacks, grays, whites, and then greens. And I actually have two different greens. I have a green that is more yellowy green, and then I have a green that's more bluey green. And they all work nicely together because they're not they're not super contrasty far apart. Like I could just mix some yellow in with this lighter green. The lightest green I have on here is the bluey green. I could just add a little bit more yellow and it would turn out to be like the more yellowy greens on here. But I did want to have a little bit of contrast because that makes them much more vibrant when they're next to each other. So if I just did a lighter tone of this yellow green that I have on here, it would look fine, but it wouldn't be quite as dynamic. So that's why I did that. And since it is such a limited color palette, I wanted to bring something in that shook it up a little bit and did make it a little bit more dynamic. So that's why I did that. So in layman's terms, it just makes it look prettier and gives it some more depth. Gives it some movement. Makes it less boring. I don't want to say it makes it pop because pop is a sound. And a lot of times when artists talk about colors popping, that is kind of a clue to galleries to not take them quite as seriously. I learned that from an art teacher I had in college. And I'm sure that's changed over the decades, because using pop to describe colors or art is in the common vernacular these days, but I still think to myself, oh no, I don't want to use that term. I know it's what everybody else uses, but it was kind of drilled into me at the time. So if I don't use it, it's not because I don't necessarily want to. It's just it makes my brain go, oh no, she's gonna fail me. Oh, Tina says lovely colors. Thank you, Tina. Yeah, I was gonna do red, orange, and purple. Yellow, red, orange, and purple on here. It didn't look right. And I had a watercolor wash background, so it was really, really light. And it just didn't look right, and I had to set it down and walk away. And like a year later, I was like, okay, let's give it a try. We're gonna paint gouache over it in those same colors, and I got like 3 or 4 colors on it, just in this sunburst center pattern, and absolutely hated it. So I set it down, and I think I set it down for a couple of years. So I finally figured out what I wanted to do with it, and it was go in a completely different direction. So that's what I'm doing now, and I already love it. Now, what you're seeing me put on the paper is the first layer of paint, kind of the base layer of paint that I can do fancy stuff on top of once everything dries. Then I can do some highlights and shadows, and then some white on top, just to make everything really dynamic, really stand out. So I'll do all these colors first, get rid of all the white in the background, and then I'll probably go in and paint the shadows on each little section, and then the highlights on each little section. And on these little fiddly bits right here, I will do something so I don't have to touch these little gray circles. And I will be going back over all of the shapes, because I know you can see where I went and made my circles not circles anymore, like on that one. I just had a blob of paint get away from me. It happens. But I know how to fix it. And then at the very end, I'll go back through and go over all of the lines on top of everything, and that will just give everything a nice crisp outline and not make it look so janky. That is the word that came to my mind. It'll make it look finished and professional. Yeah. Those are the words I was looking for. This is not a fast process by any means. And I am using a 10-0 brush, which is a very small little brush. That's because I have a lot of sharp points and small spaces that I want to get into on this design. I am much more confident using these brushes and this paint than I am with a lot of other kinds of paint, like oil paints. I don't like working with oil paints. They're messy, they're stinky, pain to clean up after. But this stuff is a dream to work with. At least I think it's a dream to work with. There are other artists who think I'm nutty for working with this, but it's one of my favorite paints. I've been working with gouache paint for just about as long as my husband and I have been married. And that's 26 years, I think. So I definitely know how to work with this, especially in small spaces like are on this drawing. So that's why I'm really kind of nonchalant about, yes, I'm going to fix it. It's okay. It's all right if I go over some of the lines or don't make them perfect. Because I've 26 years of working with this in these smaller spaces. I wouldn't want to use gouache on like a 4-foot by 5-foot canvas painting. That is outside my wheelhouse. I could do it, but I don't wanna. That would throw my brain for a loop a bit. Now, if it were a mixed media piece, and it was this and watercolor paint, that'd be fine. Could do that with no problem. Or even maybe this and a little bit of acrylic. Or a lot of acrylic and then a little bit of this. This would not stick to the acrylic well, even though acrylic is a water-based paint technically. I think the surface of it is too slippery for this paint to really stick to. Might be an interesting thing to play with, but I don't think that's for me. I don't think that combination is for me. I have used ink on acrylic, and that does just fine. And I've used ink on watercolor, and that does just fine. But I don't think. And I use ink to outline these shapes, but I don't really use it to go over the gouache paint as part of the larger um, image. Secret with working with this kind of paint is to have enough of it mixed up so you don't run out of one color. The way my brain works, I want to have that uniformity in color across my piece. Especially one like this where the shapes are so specific. On a mandala like this, I will start painting at the center and then work my way out. That's just so I don't kind of smear my hand across something that is still wet if I don't mean to. And I do work kind of, as you have seen, moving my paper around in a circular pattern, just like the work I'm painting right now. Again, that's just so I don't drag my hand through something that's wet. Just makes more work for me to do, to have to go back in and retouch it, repaint it. because this is a mandala, I'm not overly worried about where I think the light source would come from. So if I were doing a landscape, there's definitely a light source that throws shadows one direction or the other. But here I can shade it like the light source is a ring light around the outside or emanating from the center. And it's still going to make sense to the human eye and brain because it is a circular design, cyclical, and since I'm not making anything on here hyper realistic, I just have to keep in mind where I'm going to put my shadows later, where I'm going to put my highlights. And I like doing the highlights at the end, and then I'll go back through and adjust. If a shadow doesn't look right somewhere, I'll adjust that. Because every tiny bit of paint you put on your canvas or paper or wood, on your image, can make it look a lot different. Those little portraits I was doing, and I will get back to after I'm finished with this. My little 4x6 portraits, tiny little portraits. Portraiture is much more difficult for me than abstract because you think you're on the right track with a portrait and then you put one little dot or dash or line wrong and it throws everything out of balance, and then you have to figure out how to cover it up or fiddle with something else to make that face look like that face again. All right. So this for me is a lot easier. Well, for my brain, it's a lot easier. But that's why I am practicing doing those little portraits, is because I need the practice. I have always been a little bit afraid of making portraits, and now that I'm in my 50s, I think I could just suck it up and do it. So that's what I've been doing. But this one, now that I finally got it figured out with the colors I want, is coming right along. So I don't think I'm going to keep you any longer. Oh, and Amber stopped by, and Melissa Ann. Hello everyone. So I'm not going to keep you any longer today since this one was kind of an impromptu live. So I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining me right here on Chaos and Order Art by Susan Holt. Join me on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Arizona Mountain Standard Time. And I will work more on this piece for you then, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining me. Have a good day.